So I'm quite sure if you've looked at videos, you see I like manufacturing and I like telling you a story. So if I think about manufacturing, first thing you need to realize is your expenses is divided into 3 parts. It's divided into your 3 departments. Okay? What is your 3 departments? It's the factory, it's the admin, it's the sales and distribution. So basically, we will have T's for all 3 of those. Ne? But the factory we call factory overheads. Okay. And we are interested in factory overheads because factory overheads in the end will form part of the cost price. Okay. Now remember, the goal is to keep your production price as low as possible and your quality as high as possible. So now, to keep your production price as low as possible, I am taking out expenses that does not contribute to the production. Right. So your admin is whenever they refer to your office. Okay? They refer to your office. So that would be your secretary, it would be your bookkeeper, and. So in other words, the factory is where everything happens. This is where the product is made, right? So the expenses for the factory is everything to do with the production. The expenses for admin is everything to do with the office, because they need office workers. The expenses for selling and distribution is your expenses to do with exactly that, the sales and the distribution. Now remember, we're a factory, so we are selling to traders, ne? So this would be my sales reps, the commission they get. It would be my marketing. It would be all the delivery charges, ne? The fuel, the drivers, the maintenance of the delivery vans. Okay. And very important, bad debt. Now that sounds weird, but if you think about it, where does bad debts come into? It's once a debtor bought goods, so it's part of sales. And now they didn't pay, so it actually makes your sales less. So it's an expense that influences your sales. Okay. So now what happens is we are used to having an expense like, for instance, let's take rent. So I have a big amount for rent, balance for rent, let's say 100 Rand. Okay, let's make it small amounts that I don't have to write forever. But now this rent, if I'm renting the building, my business, this manufacturing business, this factory, is renting the premises. A sales rep is someone that represents the trader or the manufacturer. So in other words, sales reps that makes a lot of money, and for you guys who are interested in medicine and can't get into studying medicine, go study marketing and then get into one of these big pharma companies. So let's say Pfizer. So Pfizer has got sales reps and they get training in all their products, and they will go to pharmacies and doctors and hospitals, and they will represent big pharma there. They will show them the product, they will show them how the product works, and then that doctor or pharmacy will order the products through the rep, and that rep works with commission. So what is nice, why I say they make a lot of money, is because their sales is actually fixed. Let's say you're a sales rep for Panados. Ne? Panados falls under what? Ingram. What is the place? I don't know. But I mean, everybody knows Panados. So, but it's bought through the rep. So that rep gets commission on those Panados that sell. I also, what's interesting about it, my dad had to go for a CT scan, a brain scan, a full brain scan, but he's got a pacemaker. So the rep of the pacemakers had to come out to switch off his pacemaker and switch it on. Can you see the level of training they get, which is amazing. But I mean, we can go back to cell phones. Apple has got reps. Samsung has got reps. So, oh, don't you want to hear it? So, to answer Rochelle's question, why is a rep an expense? Because they will get commission, and it would be a commission expense for the business. Ne? Because they're paying it to the reps. It's not a commission income. What would be a commission income for let's say, a brewery? So now they send there's a new beer on the market, and they say to the shops, whatever you sell, we want a commission on that. Okay? So they give commission. No, now it sounds weird. Okay, I talk too much. Let's go on. So now I have rent. But can you see that all of these departments are inside the building? So now I'm going to allocate the expense according to how much each one uses. So I say, oh, the factory is going to get 80. Ne? He's going to carry 80, so there's going to be a rent in the factory. The office, meaning admin and sales and distribution, is each going to carry 10 of the rent. Can you see now I've got rent in each one? You see? And this I will do with every single expense. Every single expense. But some expenses, like advertising, will only go to sales and distribution. You see? Some of them will be spread over evenly. Others will just focus on a certain department. Right. And then in the end, when we draw up our income statement will still be sales, cost of sales, gross profit, operating income, operating expense. And now my block on top is literally going to be two things. Because this factory overhead is going to form part of the cost of sales. And you'll see that now. Whereas the admin, sales and distribution is going to be my expenses. So I'm just going to have two expenses. Admin, sales and distribution. Because already in the T accounts, I have accumulated the information of how much. Okay, so what I need you to understand is you're going to see an expense, right? And you're going to decide, is this expense factory, office, sales and distribution, or all three, or two of the three? And you're going to distribute it. So in your books, you'll still have T's for rent, property tax, water and electricity, depreciation, salaries, wages, and. But you're going to classify them under three headings. And those three headings is the important ones. Okay, is everybody with me? Okay, now, so that's my expenses. So I said to you, we work in threes. So I've got three there. Now my stock also works in threes. So my stock accounts, the first one is going to be my raw material. So my raw material stock, I'm going to call it direct material. By the way, what is indirect material then? It's your consumables. So the direct material is the stuff we're going to use to make the stuff. You get me? So if I'm making apple juice, direct material would be apples. Right. Indirect material, would be the cleaning material, because you need to keep the factory clean. But it's not going to go into your apple juice. So, now, raw material, if you look, I just want to show you, last year we did T accounts. So this year we do statements. I want you to look on the paper I just handed out. There's one that says direct material cost. So that, it feels like I'm always not in the frame. Okay, there we go. So direct material cost. What is it that I am interested in? Let's quickly look. This is my opening balance. So remember when I did the T last year for raw material, I had a balance. It's that one. Then I had purchases. So it was cash and credit. Purchases. Now they say here net purchases. So the moment the word net is there, it means I minused something. So it would be my total purchases less what?
Returns.
Less returns. And is it returns from debtors or returns that we return?
To creditors.
It's to creditors. This returns here is to creditors. It's not from debtors. Okay. Carriage on purchases, customs. Can you see periodic system here? Less the closing balance. So this side would be the returns. Then I would have the balance CO. And what would this answer be then? Where would this thing that I balance on go? Work in process. Yes, and this, that one there at the bottom, that direct material cost, that is the material that is issued. That's the issued material. What does it mean if stuff is issued? So let's go to school. Let's work in a thing that you understand. So us teachers get stationery from the school. So now I need paper clips and black pens and plastic pockets. So I would go to Miss Hubert, and she's got a little form, and I need to tick the form and hand it in to her. She then goes, here is a storage room here under the stairs, you all know it, next to the office. She goes there, she counts out the stuff that I need, and she's going to deduct it from my department's budget, and then she issues it out to me. You understand? She takes it from the storage room, she issues it out to me. In other words, in a factory, you will literally have a storage room with raw material, and you'll have a manager that's in charge of those stock. That manager would be in charge of ordering in stock and issuing stock to the factory. Because you can't keep all the goodies. If you have a bakery, are you going to keep everything on the kitchen counter? No, you put it in the pantry. You get it? And then when you go in the pantry, you take what you need. Now, it's just a bigger picture. There's someone in charge of the pantry. You have to ask them for flour. They take the flour, they give it to you. That process is called issuing. Okay, so everybody shop with it. Okay, so the next stock that we have is our work in process. Some textbooks say process, others says progress. That's why I just say work in P. It sounds horrid, but you'll remember it. Yes. Put on your glasses. I don't know what's your problem. Okay. So, the direct material is going to be issued to the work in process. So I'm going to have direct material there. Does that make sense? So work in process is literally your factory floor. This is where everything happens. This is where they're making the Simba chippies. So this T account looks like this. I'm going to have an opening balance. How on earth can I have an opening balance? Let's quickly think. Does it work like this? We are in the Simba chippy factory. And now the chippies is frying in the oil. And it's 6 o'clock. It's Chaila time. Right? What's going to happen to those chippies? It's going to go on because, okay, this is not a good example. Let's try another one. We are in a knitting factory. So now the ladies is sitting and they are knitting. Right? You get it? Now it's 6 o'clock. So now the ladies who are knitting is going to say, oh, this is the end of the financial year. We need to finish this jersey first before we can go home. Is that how it works? No, they don't even know it's the end of the financial year. They just say, the clock says strike home. So they put down what they're busy with. They go home. Tomorrow they come back. They pick up. They continue. Can you see? So there will be unfinished stock. Right. Because what's the difference between your old financial year and your new financial year? One night of good rest. Ne? The people working on the floor are not even aware of beginning of the finance. Because remember, most years starts 1st of March or 1st of July. It's not a January thing necessarily. Okay, enough about that. Then also my direct labor. Now can you see those two forms part of the product. They are literally busy with the product. Okay. Then I'm going to also close my factory overheads. Remember those expenses that I threw into the factory overheads T? I'm going to close it to the work in process. Because what's happening? If I'm making that apple juice, I need the apples. Ne? I need the people squeezing the apples. And I need electricity for the machinery. Can you see? And that's the 3 things I need to make a product. It's always direct material, direct labor, factory, overheads. Okay, those 3. Yes? DM is direct material. DL is direct labor. FO, factory overheads. Okay. Now, if you look at the paper I gave you, that factory, please listen. This is the production cost statement, but it's literally your work in P. It's your work in progress. Okay? Because look at this. I want to show you. It's your direct material cost. In other words, the issued material. It's your direct labor cost. Now, let me quickly just talk about direct labor cost. Direct labor cost is the factory worker Now, please, don't see the factory foreman as a factory worker. Yes, he works inside the factory. But when we talk about factory workers, we are specifically referring to the people on the line. You get what I'm saying if I say on the line?
Yes, ma'am.
It's the people who's busy in the production process. They're busy making the product. Okay. I also once see in one paper they talked about machinists. And I thought that's a mechanic, but it was not. That machinist is the workers operating the machines, the factory workers. Now can you see they talk about, here comes my salary and wages, the factory wage. So these factory workers will always earn a wage, not a salary, because they will be paid per hour. And 40 hours is norm. More than 40 hours is overtime. And they get paid overtime for working more than 40 hours. Is overtime necessarily when it's dark?
No.
Is overtime necessarily when it's Saturday or Sunday?
Yes.
No. No. They work on 40 hours in 7 days. You get what I'm saying? So you will see these people that work in Edgar's and Truus in Menlyn shopping mall. Fridays it's open till 9, it's open Saturdays till 7, it's open Sundays till 6. That's not overtime. Because Monday and Tuesday they're not coming to work. They work 40 hours. And that is why a lot of factories works in shifts. So they divide their day into 3 shifts of 8 hours each. So if a worker works 8 hours, 5 days, it's 40 hours a week. You get me? Even though his shift starts 10 o'clock at night. Okay. So let's go on. Can you see this factory wage is your gross? And doesn't this look a lot like income statement? It does, because it's your gross and your contributions. Now, chances are that they ask you this note. It's very rare. Most of the times they will ask this as a calculation. Right? Okay. Everybody with me? So, production cost statement. I've got my direct material, meaning my raw material. My direct labor, meaning the factory worker. And then I get a name called the primary cost. Okay, because I can't do anything without those 2 elements. Can you see? Then I add factory overheads. I was quite sure if I did this T, I add direct material, direct labor, factory overheads. Now they're just splitting it and they're saying that direct material, direct labor is the primary cost. And the moment they add factory overheads, it becomes the total manufacturing cost. Can you see? Okay, there we go. Total manufacturing cost. You have to know these wordings because it might be that they ask you to calculate the total manufacturing cost. Then you have to know direct material, direct labor, factory overheads. Or it could be that they give you the total, the prime cost. Then you know you're already starting the statement with this. Okay. And then what do I short? I short the 2 balances. So this is your opening balance and this is your closing balance, meaning this one you're going to minus. And what does that give you? And I want you to read that because that word is extremely important. It's the cost of production of finished goods. Meaning, this is the stuff that I finished producing this year. This is not your cost of sales. This is the stuff I finished making. Did all of them sell? Not necessary. Okay. So, if you look here at the T, this side I will have my closing balance, and there I will have my finished goods. And in other words, these things are now going to my third stock account, which is finished goods. Finished goods. Okay. So finished goods, obviously I've got here now the work in process, which is the newly finished goods. Right? You got me. But it's going to have an opening balance and a closing balance. How on earth will they have an opening and a closing balance? What is finished goods? Finished goods is the goods that's ready to be sold. Does everything always sell out? No. So in other words, let's say I make matric dance dresses. It means I had 4 dresses from last year that didn't sell. I made 20 now. So how many do I have available to sell? 24. And in the end I say, oh, I've got 7 left. How many did I sell? 4 plus 20 less 7. I've got 17 that is sold. And that 17 that is sold is my cost of sales. Because everything here, is most working towards what it cost me. Right. You guys with me? So, this is a very important one. Because what they do a lot of times, and please, just take some or other very bright highlighter and just highlight this a different color than anything else. This work in process here, this one, this is this guy here. It's the cost of the finished goods. It's the cost of stuff that I finished producing now. Okay. You guys get it? So, what they do with this thing here, the cost of production of finished goods, they might say, we produced 10 dresses and the cost price was 20 rand. So you say 10 times 20. Right? Does that make sense? Or they will give you all the things you need to do for the finished goods T account. Remember, finished goods, it's an opening, it's a work in process, which is that purple one. Oh. It's a cost of sales, and it's a closing stock. So they will give you all the information. They will tell you how to calculate cost of sales, and you have to balance on that so that you can transfer it here. You see? But you'll see when we get to the questions. Everybody with me? Yes. Okay. So, what they like to do is they like to make manufacturing, let me tell you, manufacturing is actually the question that counts. It's one of the questions that counts the most. Right. And they divide the question into 2 parts. The first part of the question will be this. Okay? So the first part of the question would be about the production cost statement. You guys get me? Okay. The second part of the question will be they want you to solve problems. And that will bring in the break-even point. Okay. So what is the break-even point? What does it mean to break even? Break even means there's no profit or loss. I broke even. If it cost me 10 rand to make this highlighter, I sold it for 10 rand. No profit, no loss. So, what a producer needs to know? He needs to know how many products does he need to sell before he breaks even. Okay, so your formula, it's the total fixed cost. I'm going to put a T there. It's the total fixed cost. Oh, what's fixed cost again? This is grade 11 work. Let's quickly think. What was fixed cost? It's your factory overheads and your admin. Now you say to me, how can factory overheads be fixed? Because factory overheads has got water and electricity in it. Factory overheads has got the cleaner's wage in it, and she doesn't work the same hours every year. And I'm going to give her an increase somewhere maybe, and about, how can it be fixed? So I know in business they do it different, but in accounting they say fixed cost is not influenced by units. Okay? So in other words, if I switch on the oven to bake a bread, the electricity I'm going to use if I bake one bread is going to be exactly the same if I put 2 more pans in it and I bake 3 breads. I use exactly the same electricity. If I switch on that light in my class, will I use more electricity on a Saturday when the class is double full than on a Monday when it's only half of this class? No, I use the same electricity. So you can't measure it. So let's quickly think about it. So you can't measure it by the units. Okay? You can work it out per unit by taking the fixed cost, dividing the units and say, oh, this is the fixed cost per unit. Ne? But you cannot say, oh, because I add an extra unit now, this cost is going to increase with X amount. It's impossible. Okay, you guys get me? Sharp. So, on top of the selling price per unit less the variable cost per unit. And what is variable costs? It's measured by units. Ne? So, if units increase, it's per unit. Ne? I don't know how else to write that. But it's measured by the unit. So if I'm baking a cake and it takes 1 egg, and I'm baking 2 cakes, it takes 2 eggs. If I'm baking 3 cakes, it takes 3 eggs. You get what I'm saying. Okay. So your variable cost is your direct material cost, your direct labor cost, and your sales and distribution. Okay. So now, what else could I have said? I could have said it's your prime cost plus sales and distribution. Now let's do an example. I'm going to make an excursion and I'm going to take you all to a museum. So now to do that, I need to order a bus and I need to buy tickets to enter the museum. Which one is fixed and which one is variable? The bus is fixed. The tickets are variable because it's going to depend on who's going. Okay. So the bus cost me 3,000 rand. This is fixed. Okay. So the tickets, let's say the tickets costs, so the variable cost is 100 rand per person. But I'm going to charge you 150. Why will I charge you 150?
Profit.
Not just profit, also to help kids that can maybe not pay, also to buy my ticket, because I'm not going to pay for my ticket because I'm giving up my time for those extra costs. So, how many kids need to go before I break even?
50.
Okay, so the first thing I want to see is 150 less 100 gives me 50. I call this the contribution. Okay, now if I say 3,000 divided 50, it means 60 kids needs to go before I break even. Now I'm thinking the bus only takes 60 kids. Right? So all 60 kids needs to pay. So what can I do in this situation to make my break-even point a little bit lower? Because I want to take 60 kids, but I actually want to sponsor at least 5. So let's quickly see. What am I going to change in this equation?
SP.
My selling price. So let's make this 170. Ne? So now my contribution is 70. So now my break even is going to go down to what? 43 point? Okay, so it was 42.85. And you never round it up. Your break even point, you always round it off. So you're going to say it's 42. Because can you see that's a part of a whole? And can you sell a .85 of a jersey?
But aren't you rounding up? Because if you have 42, then you won't have enough to...
Exactly. You're going to round up. So, but now, be careful. If it was 42.1, you will also say 43. Because I still need to sell that, even if it's just a bit of the product that's going to give me a profit. I can't sell a bit of a product. So I have to sell the whole product. Does that make sense? Okay.
Makes sense.
So let's go back to this. What else? Let's say again it's 3,150 less than 100. What else could I change that my break-even point can drop?
You can get a discount for the bus.
I can get a discount for the bus, so that my fixed costs is less. I can get a sponsor. Or I can ask for a special donation from the museum. Student discount. Maybe the teacher can go for free. You know.
Also teaching.
Okay. You guys get what I'm saying? Now, we are used to, in grade 11, they ask you to calculate this. In grade 12, they ask you to calculate it, but they have variations. So a lot of them is they will tell you, prove the break-even point of 43. So meaning, you have to show this calculation. So they won't give you a mark for the 43, they will give you marks for that. Another one that they like to do is they will ask you, this business wants to make a profit, an extra 5,000 Rand profit. How many extra products do they need to produce? So what will you do? You will take the 5,000 and divide it by the contribution. Let me explain to you why. Let's say I make t-shirts. This is the one I did with you last year as well. I'm going to stop this video and continue it